And welcome to Cookye Tech N Talk Table, first edition, episode 1. Today I talk about how I morphed my vintage PC into a vintage gaming juggernaut of the mid-1990s all the way up to 2000 professional. I will also go over some of the Dojin fighting games and PC games that I bought long ago back from 1995 up to 2000 before the internet became what it is today. Stay tuned. So for nostalgic purposes, there were 3 type of computers that I loved back in the early 90s. One of them was the Dell Dimension XPS series when I was in high school. Another was the Gateway series. And then, who can forget the lovely and wonderful innovative PCs of the Sunnyvale? They were known for having beautiful desktops back during the days of Windows 95, 98, and XP when that was released in 2003. I could have developed my own vintage PC by building it from the ground up, but instead I decided to go with the nostalgic factor of going with one of the 3 companies that I belovedly loved so far back then. So I decided to go with Dell Dimensions because I had a Dell Latitude laptop that was Pentium 3 around 800 megahertz, and at the time DVD drives were just being created for portable laptops, and I was able to watch my movies. I had fell in love with the Dell Dimension series only because it was known for having great quality for playing PC games. For me at the time, I was using it for emulators, and it wouldn't be till later on when I started using eBay back in 2003 that I would discover the wonderful world of Dojin video games and PC games from Japan, anime games from Japan, and everything else in between that would spark my interest to go back in time to have a wonderful vintage gaming PC from which back then I could not afford. So I'm just going to go deeply in depth with some of the pieces that I decided to go and use. So as I zoom up to the table, I took a long time of research for all the pieces that I wanted to put into my gaming machine. Because I did not build this from the ground up, though I could have if I wanted to, I decided not to reinvent the wheel by going and getting the Pentium 3 motherboard and other pieces that most gamers would have loved to do from the ground up. For me, I wanted to go more with the nostalgic factor of companies that I loved back when I was a kid. So I decided to just go and get one already made that was already constructed, typically Dell right here, Dimension XPS B1000, and add some of the best pieces that would max it out. One of the things that I loved about Dell is that it came with everything equipped. It came with a DVD-ROM drive, as you can see right here. It came with a CD rewritable drive, regular CD writable, burning at 24x. And for those of you who were interested back then, zip drives. I love the iOmega zip drives, and Dell had a way of integrating zip drives integrated into their machines. Loved them. And so I didn't want to buy an external zip drive and have one already in it, and Dell was known for manufacturing that with their PC towers back in 1998. So that being the case, I had to go find a PC warehouse where I can find one of the last created Dell machines from that era. And I managed to luck out and find a Pentium 3 running at 1 gigahertz, right at the cusp end of the life of Windows 2000 getting ready to go into XP. So, I don't know if you can see right here, but I'm going to get a little bit closer and try to zoom in the best way that I can. But you can see that there was a sticker there, and that sticker says it was, of course, Pentium 3 inside. It was designed for Windows 98, 2000 Professional, and NT. Now, I want to go more into the pieces, the PCI cards that I decided to go and put into this gaming rig of mine. So starting here, this is your standard network adapter. With this here, yep, there we go. with this network adapter right here. This one particularly is by Netgear, or you can wait, hold up. Let me look at this again. Sorry, wrong name. TrendNet. This one is by TrendNet. I went with TrendNet instead of Netgear only because I like the flexibility of those cards. I'm going to zoom out a bit so people can see what I'm talking about a bit better. There we go. I decided to go more with this only because of the flexibility of how I don't have to worry too much about trying to discover where I can find the vintage drivers at for this card. And I lucked out. When I got this card, it was only $5, and it came complete with the box and with the CD. Then another piece of innovative technology I wanted my tower to have. By the way, all these cards are AGP. These are all AGP cards that fit into the card slots of the tower. So I'm going to just go to the tower real quickly so you can see what I'm doing here. So all of those white slots right there that you see, those white slots, all of that is where these cards would go. Your sound card, your video card, your USB to PCI cards, all the extra peripheral cards will go in those slots right there, which would create added amenities to your motherboard and the overall experience of your gaming vintage computer. So I'm going to go right back to where I was, right here. So that was my network card by TrendNet right there. And then the next one I thought would be interesting to have, which is really an innovative piece of tech that's known to be on Apple machines, which is a Firewire card. Now, I've never ever had the need for a Firewire card, but I thought it was cool because it was Apple's way of saying, we're going to bring in the first age of USB 3.0 into the 90s, but it was called Firewire. It's mainly for cameras and such, and faster external hard drives during the time. I wanted one. This is a plug-and-play card. It's created by VIA, VIA right there. And this one is just plug-and-play. You just put it in and don't have to worry about any drivers. It works on Windows 98, 2nd edition, and of course XP in 2000. Now, because this particular rig right here only has 2 USB ports in the back, I'm going to go to the back of this so you can see it. There we go. We only have 2 USB ports right there. It was absolutely paramount that I go and I get extra USBs put into. I needed a PCI to USB card slot. This is also by VIA Plug and Play. And I decided to get 4 extra ones on this card. So now I have a total of 6. 2 that came with the machine and an extra 4 that I added. So next we're going to go to the sound card. Oh my God. The sound card is very important because this will change the overall experience of how you play your video games, especially if you're a vintage gamer like me who love old games from between 95 all the way up to 2000. Now, there's an interesting little story about this. Originally, I had a Sound Blaster 5.1 live card, and I spent 4 days literally trying to get the drivers for this, which is the reason why this video is coming out late. I wanted to make sure that I had all the sound drivers for the card, and for some reason that Sound Blaster Live 5.1 card, I just could not find the drivers. And then when I thought I found the drivers, they wouldn't install properly. Then the computer is saying I don't have administrative rights to install the driver. I went through so much, and I finally broke down and went back to the PC warehouse known as Weird Stuff, located on the cusp of Sunnyvale and Mountain View on Caribbean Drive. Just so you know, I'll put that address in the link to this video. It's called Weird Stuff. That's where I got a lot of my extra pieces that I didn't buy from eBay. So while I went back to go find a new sound card, I bought a couple, and one of them that they gave to me brand new was this Sound Blaster Audigy 2ZS. Now, according to this card, it gives you 7.1 channels, exactly what it said that it did, with an added Firewire port. For the ultimate gaming rig, most people that build their computers from the ground up, not like what I did right here and just bought one already kind of pre-made already, this card would work well with an actual sound rig if you was willing to take out this extra DVD drive and put in an actual sound drive. with a mixer, that card will work well with that mixer. But because I'm not creating music, it doesn't really serve my purposes. I do want to hear the best sound that I can for some of my old emulated games and my PC games that you see right here, which I will talk about in the very immediate future. I decided to retry again with a new Sound Blaster card and go with the Audigy ZS. Let's zoom into that name right there. I don't know if you can see that. It's a little fuzzy here, so I'm just going to tell you what it is. Sound Blaster Audigy 2 ZS. 7.1 channels. And you can see all the ports on the back right here, including a mini, like a Firewire port there as well. Even has a digital out, line in, line out. Really for people that are creating music. I'm not a music creator, but I'm a music enthusiast, so I wanted to have the best sound possible. Works with Windows 98, 98 2nd Edition, ME 2000, and also XP, given that you have the right drivers. And then last but not least, what vintage gaming tower would be complete without having the right video card? Now, just want to let you know, at the time of this video, I do not have the updated video card. My machine can hold up to a 512 megabyte dedicated video card. Right now in my hand I have a 128 gigabyte. Let me say it again, 128 megabyte, not gigabyte. Megabyte. Yeah, gigabyte back in the 90s. Yeah, right. Megabyte dedicated card, 128 megabyte dedicated card right here. And this is by GeForce AGP card, of course, 6200. Now this has done excellent justice for me. It served my purposes. And of course, I did order a 512 megabyte card, in which this system right here will max out at. If you can see the green rim right there, that green rim, that's where the video card goes right there. And that's where I will have that 512 card when that comes in the mail. One interesting fact about Dell computers. Sometimes they can be very proprietary. And with that, they only like to have their technology assigned to their motherboards. And they will really max out their own PC so that you can't always put in the things that you want, or you have to put specific PCI cards in it so that it can work correctly. What I noticed is that there was no room for me to put a second hard drive, which is what I'm getting into right now. The hard drive it came with was this 80 gigabyte hard drive. I had spent several days trying to make dual operating systems on this 180 gig hard drive right here by Seagate. I was trying to put not only Windows 98, but also Windows XP and 2003 operating systems on one hard drive at once. It was not working because some of my knowledge escaped me and had to come back to me to remember that 98 and 95 works with a FAT32 formatting system, and Windows NT 2000 or 2000 Professional has the option for FAT32, but really it was designed for NTFS file conversion system, and it's been like that with Windows operating systems from there on up to currently right now. So I had to go and get a second IDE hard drive. Yes, IDE hard drive. I couldn't use a SATA because SATA didn't exist yet, and so that means I had to get a slave cable or slave ribbon, for those interchangeable words right there. And this is 500 gigabytes. So I have Windows XP Plus. Let me say it right. Windows XP Plus running on the 500 gigabyte Western Digital hard drive. Oh, good. You can actually see the 500. Okay, it's zooming in. Great. So Windows XP Plus. Yes, Plus. I found out that there was a plus literally 20-something years later. I find out that there is a plus to XP. I've always had an affinity for Windows 98 Plus, 2nd edition, and also Windows 95 Plus, which is what marked my introduction into my first PC running at a Pentium 2 at a 400 megahertz. So Windows 98 2nd edition Plus, gotta put that plus in there because plus makes a difference, on the 80 gig, and XP Plus, that's right, Plus, on the 500 gigabytes. Last but not least, the RAM. Without RAM, you can't even power on the machine because this is the memory that makes everything work. I can only max this machine out. I'm going to go right back over here. Get a closer zoom here. Got to go all up in the machine So you can actually see, I may have to turn this shit sideways. There we go. There we go. There we go. Where my finger's at. That's where the RAM goes, right there. That can only hold up to 512 megabytes of RAM. Can you believe it? 512? 512. Back then, that was the shit. 512. So I have PC100 RAM right here of 256 megabytes. I don't think you can really see the letters there. I may have to like, ooh, damn, you can't see nothing. Oh, well, I could just have to tell you. This is 256 megabytes of PC100 RAM. And I have two slots right here where this machine right here will max out at. Now, with that being said, the last but not least that I'm waiting in for the mail is I'm waiting for my final PCI to IDE cable controller card. Why do I need that? I need that because the way Dell had set up this machine right here, I was only allowed, let's see, maybe I may zoom in just a little bit. I'm going to zoom a little bit out right here. Okay, there we go. They set it up to where the internal zip drive is connected to the 80 gig hard drive. The two CD drives, the DVD-ROM drive and the CD burner are connected to each other. And then the floppy drive, which is right here, which is its own separate connection, connects to its own IDE slave cable onto the motherboard. So then where does that leave you to put a second hard drive? It doesn't, because all the cables are used up and all the resources are used up. And that's why they have all of these AGP PCI slot openings right here, so that the way you expand the resources is by putting in a controller card, an APG controller card in one of those white slots right there, so that you can go and hook up your second hard drive. So for right now, I'm actually running this machine with unhooking the internal zip drive and only using that resource cable for both hard drives, the 80 gig and the 500 gig right here. So until that controller card comes in, I will not be able to hook back up my internal zip. But once it comes in, now I will have actually maxed out this PC with the farthest it can go in terms of resources. 512 megabytes of RAM, 512 dedicated megabyte video card with, we're going to go over these parts again. This is the 128 video card right here that has a S-video out and VGA and DVI port right there. Let me go zoom into that again right there. When the 512 card comes in, I won't need that anymore. The 7.1 channel Sound Blaster Audio G ZS2 right there, that card right there, along with the PCI to extra USB 2.0 slots right there. Same thing, but for Firewire ports, PCI to Firewire external ports right there, or internal ports, I should say. And then of course, by Trend Net, their universal plug and play network cards so I can reach the net. One thing that I did try, which was very funny, was trying to go onto the internet with Windows 98. And let me tell you, it was not happening. There were no resources for which Windows 98 could connect to the internet to download anything to get it up and running. It's so obsolete you can't even hit the net anymore. But one thing that is true, you can still get onto the internet using Windows XP as long as you have Service Pack 3. Can you believe it? We are so far in technology right now that older operating systems truly are obsolete, but it was a great experiment just to try. And so that concludes this portion of the Tech N Talk table right here with how I decided to set up my vintage gaming PC. Instead of building it from the ground up, which I could have, I decided to go with a pre-made rig with a company that I fell in love with back during high school days, which was the Dell Dimension XPS series. And this one, the XPS B1000, comes with a Pentium 3 1 gigahertz with an internal zip drive, a floppy drive, a CD burner burning at 24x, and a DVD-ROM drive. I will in the future be putting in a DVD rewritable with light scribe burning IDE drive right here, which is possible because they made an IDE version of it there to kind of kick this up to its limit. Internally, it allows you to take 5 5 PCI card slots. Of course, they have to be APG version cards, because that's the sign of the times back then. That will allow me to maximize the internal motherboard resources, maxing out at 512 RAM, and of course, when the card comes in, 512 megabytes of dedicated video memory. So we're going to go into a closer look one more time. This is the Dell Dimension that I bought, the XPS B1000. And then you can even see these are my CDs right here that I bought for Windows 98. That's the first one, the 98. This one was the development platform series. Disc 14 has 98 and 98 second edition, along with some Windows 2000 updates. I even have an extra Windows 98 second edition disc that I made a copy of, and the disc that allows 98 to become 98 plus. Isn't that great? 98 plus. I like how Microsoft made all these extra little Easter eggs back in the day. Like, now you can have the new operating system with plus, whatever that's supposed to mean. It's like, here's an extra napkin, and it has embroidery on it. That's what makes it plus. So that concludes that portion. Now, let's talk about the games that I have here in the corner. Well, in front of us, I should say. This is what sparked my interest in wanting to go and get myself a gaming PC from the vintage 90s, or the late 90s that I wanted to have. I bought a lot of these games through an online system, a third-party online system back in 2003 and 4 called Akibado and Mark in Japan. Akibado was your predecessor to what you see as online bidding proxies. We now live in an age now where a digital age where you can buy anything through an online proxy. You bid for it through Japanese or Chinese auction. That proxy network will buy it for you with the money that you have in the account, and then when it reaches their office, then they pay the shipping and handling from their office to you. That's how I get the majority of my modern day stuff. But back before that existed, back when eBay was really becoming hot and you could actually pay with other resources outside of PayPal, before PayPal was owned by eBay, I had to go through some sketchy online distributors. One of them was called Akibado, and I would send them the descriptions of the things that I want. They would tell me how much it is used or new, and then I would have to pay them. They get it, and then they send it back to me. And so I'm speaking with somebody I never met online, and I trusted them, and that's how I did that kind of business. And I just was lucky every time that they came back with my stuff. They shipped my stuff to me. They took my money, of course, and they actually shipped me the things that I wanted. That's how I got started with my PlayStation 1 collection, which I'll talk on a later date, and the PC collection that you see right here. So in my previous video, which was marking the 7th season of the Faux Sung Elizabeth Cookie Show, I was talking mostly about Dojin Games, vintage games. I did a response video on Melty Blood, and I talked about, slightly owning some of the original games from back when they came out in the early 2000s. So this is, the original Melty Blood release right here. This is Melty Blood. It was released in 2002, for the PC, for Windows XP. This is the sequel, React. React came out on original PC disc right there. And that's just to name a few. I have Parties Breaker, Queen of Hearts 2001, Queen of Hearts 99, Hino Kakera, and a bunch of other Dojin fighting games. Subtle Style, for those of you who like, I think it's called Akatsuki Blitz Camps. This is the original disc that came out for XP back in 2003 right here. I used to go to a lot of Japanese anime conventions back home on the East Coast, and during 2003, 2004, and 2005, before the internet became a large marketplace to buy your material, you had to go to the major anime conventions to buy this stuff. So the distributors would come all the way from Japan to sell their merchandise, and that's when I truly maxed out my credit card back then in the day, when I had like a $2,000 credit card limit with MasterCard through HSBC. I had maxed out my credit card buying all these original games for Windows 98 XP in 2000 because I knew I would never see them again. And boy, are these games now completely and utterly out of print. you have to either find them on an auction, and if you do, they're expensive, or, you know, people like me that keep them in a museum make copies for others. I also managed to get my hand through that retail service Akibado that I just mentioned back then was VG Rebirth Dash, which is the upgrade to VG Rebirth. So all of you guys know that I'm a big Variable Geo fan. That's like my favorite all-female fighting game in the video gaming community. And there were two versions. There was VG Rebirth, and then there was the upgraded one, VG Rebirth Dash. I have every VG game ever created except Rebirth. I managed to get my hands on Rebirth Dash. Then this is also for PC 98 and also for Windows 98. The original Variable Geo. This is VG Adventure for Windows 95 and 98. VG Neo right here, the 10th anniversary that came out in 2003 to commemorate the VG Neo 3-episode OVA anime. That also was released for Windows XP. VG Custom, which runs on 98 and XP. VG Max, now this is the chibi version of Variable Geo with a new added female known as Masako who fights with a spiked club. That also was released for Windows XP, but technically it could run on 98. And then last I have the original Fate Stay Night PC game. So that's some proof right there that this is the reason why I really wanted my vintage gaming rig right here, so I can go and relive the moments of some older games that are not only out of print, but they are totally and utterly incapable of running on any modern day system. So I have my modern gaming rig, and now I have my vintage gaming rig. So that concludes this first edition, episode 1 of Cookye's Tech N Talk table. Thank you ever so much for looking at this episode. If there's anything else you want for me to talk about in the future on the Tech N Talk table series, please do let me know. I will continue to be talking about one episode a week, a piece of vintage technology or current piece of technology that I will be reviewing. Today we're talking about, or have talked about, the nostalgic era of Windows 95 all the way up to XP, and how I decided to not totally build my system from the ground up, but rather upgrade the pieces that will give me the max amount of gaming experience that I'd like on an older rig that I fell in love with so many years ago, back when I was in high school. So, alright. Say Cookie.